Hello, this is Morale Bernard with the continuation of the story, The Secret Adversary. And please subscribe to the channel and please share the videos. Thank you. Last words were, well, the upshot was that Aunt Jane went out west and we never heard from her again. The old man did pile it up. He went into oil. And he went into steel, and he played a bit with railroads, and I can tell you, he made Wall Street sit up. He paused. And then he died last fall. And I got the dollars. Well, would you believe it? My conscience got busy. Kept knocking me up and saying, what about your Aunt Jane way out west? It worried me some, you see. I figured it out that Amos Finn would never make good. He wasn't the sort. End of it was. I hired a man to hunt her down. Result? She was dead. And Amos Finn was dead. But they'd left a daughter, Jane, who'd been torpedoed in the Lusitania on her way to Paris. She was saved, all right. But they didn't seem able to hear of her over this side. I guess they weren't hustling anyway. So I thought I'd come along over and speed things up. I phoned Scotland Yard and the Admiralty first thing. The Admiralty rather choked me off, but Scotland Yard were very civil, said they would make inquiries. Even sent a man round this morning to get her photograph. I'm off to Paris tomorrow just to see what the prefecture is doing. I guess if I go to and fro hustling them, they ought to get busy. The energy of Mr. Hershmeyer was tremendous. They bowed before it. But say now, he ended, you're not after her for anything. Contempt of court or something British? A proud-spirited young American girl might find your rules and regulations in wartime rather irksome and set up against it. If that's the case, and there's such a thing as graft in this country, I'll buy her off. Tuppence reassured him. Okay, that's good. Then we can work together. What about some lunch? Shall we have it up here or go down to the restaurant? Tuppence expressed a preference for the latter, and Julius bowed to her decision. Oysters had just given place to sole Colbert when a card was brought to Hershmeyer. Inspector Japp, CID, Scotland Yard again. Another man this time. What does he expect I can tell him that I didn't tell the first chap? I hope they haven't lost that photograph. That Western photographer's place was burnt down and all his negative destroyed. This is the only copy in existence. I got it from the principal of the college there. An unformulated dread swept over Tuppence. You don't know the name of the man who came this morning? Yes, I do know. No, I don't. Half a second. It was on his card. Oh, I know. Inspector Brown. Quite unassuming sort of chap. A veil might, with profit, be drawn over the events of the next half hour. Suffice it to say that no such person as Inspector Brown was known to Scotland Yard. The photograph of Jane Finn, which would have been of the utmost value to the police in tracing her, was lost beyond recovery. Once again, Mr. Brown had triumphed. The immediate result of this setback was to effect a rapprochement between Julius Hershmeyer and the young adventurers. All barriers went down with a crash, and Tommy and Tuppence felt they had known the young American all their lives. They abandoned the discreet reticence of private inquiry agents and revealed to him the whole history of the joint venture, whereat the young man declared himself tickled to death. He turned to Tuppence at the close of the narration. I've always had a kind of idea that English girls were just a mite moss-grown, old-fashioned and sweet, but scared to move round without a footman or a maiden aunt. I guess I'm a bit behind the times. The upshot of these confidential relations was that Tommy and Tuppence took up their abode forthwith at the Ritz, in order, as Tuppence put it, to keep in touch with Jane Finn's only living relation. And put like that, she added confidentially to Tommy, nobody could boggle at the expense. Nobody did, which was the great thing. And now, said the young lady on the morning after their installation to work. Mr. Beresford put down the Daily Mail which he was reading, and applauded with somewhat unnecessary vigour. He was politely requested by his colleague not to be an ass. Dash it all, Tommy. We've got to do something for our money. Tommy sighed. Yes, I fear even the dear old government will not support us at the Ritz in idleness forever. Therefore, as I said before, we must do something. Well, said Tommy, picking up the Daily Mail again. Do it. I shan't stop you. You see, continued Tuppence, I've been thinking. She was interrupted by a fresh bout of applause. It's all very well for you to sit there being funny, Tommy. It would do you no harm to do a little brain work too. My union, Tuppence, my union. It does not permit me to work before 11 a.m. Tommy, do you want something thrown at you? It is absolutely essential that we should, without delay, map out a plan of campaign. Hear, hear. Well, let's do it. Tommy laid his paper finally aside. There's something of the simplicity of the truly great mind about you, Tuppence. Fire ahead. I'm listening. To begin with, says Tuppence, what have we to go upon? Absolutely nothing, said Tommy cheerily. Wrong. Tuppence wagged an energetic finger. We have two distinct clues. And what are they? First clue, we know one of the gang. Whittington. Yes, I'd recognise him anywhere. Said Tommy doubtfully. I don't call that much of a clue. You don't know where to look for him, and it's about 1,000 to 1 against your running against him by accident. I'm not so sure about that, replied Tuppence thoughtfully. I've often noticed that once coincidences start happening, they go on happening in the most extraordinary way. I dare say it's some natural law that we haven't found out. Still, as you say, we can't rely on that. But there are places in London where simply everyone is bound to turn up sooner or later. Piccadilly Circus, for instance. One of my ideas was to take up my stand there every day with a tray of flags. What about meals? Inquired the practical Tommy. How like a man. What does mere food matter? That's all very well. You've just had a thundering good breakfast. But one's got a better appetite than you have. Tuppence, and by tea time you'd be eating the flags, pins and all. But honestly, I don't think much of the idea. Whittington mayn't be in London at all. That's true anyway. I think clue number 2 is more promising. Let's hear it. It's nothing much, only a Christian name, Rita. Whittington mentioned it that day. Are you proposed in a third advertisement, wanted female cook or crook, answering to the name of Rita? I'm not. I propose to reason in a logical manner. That man Danvers was shadowed on the way over, wasn't he? And it's more likely to have been a woman than a man. I don't see that at all. I'm absolutely certain that it would be a woman, and a good-looking one, replied Tuppence calmly. On these technical points, I bow to your decision, murmured Mr. Beresford. Now, obviously this woman, whoever she was saved. How do you make that out? If she wasn't, how would they have known Jane Finn had got the papers? Correct. Proceed, O Sherlock. Now, there's just a chance, I admit it's only a chance, that this woman may have been Rita. And if so? Well, if so, we've got to hunt through the survivors of the Lusitania till we find her. Then the first thing is to get a list of the survivors. I've got it. I wrote a long list of things I wanted to know and sent it to Mr. Carter. I got his reply this morning. And among other things, it encloses the official statement of those saved from the Lusitania. How's that for clever little Tuppence? Full marks for industry, 0 for modesty. But the great point is there a Rita on the list? That's just what I don't know, confessed Tuppence. Don't know? Yes, look here. Together they bent over the list. You see, very few Christian names are given. They're nearly all Mrs. or Miss. Tommy nodded. Oh, that complicates matters, he murmured thoughtfully. Tuppence gave her a characteristic terrier shake. Well, we've just got to get down to it, that's all. We'll start with the London area. Just note down the addresses of any of the females who live in London or roundabout while I put on my hat. 5 minutes later, the young couple emerged into Piccadilly. And a few seconds later, a taxi was bearing them to the Laurels, Glendover Road, N7, the residence of Mrs. Edgar Keith, whose name figured first in a list of 7 reposing in Tommy's pocketbook. The Laurels was a dilapidated house standing back from the road with a few grimy bushes to support the fiction of a front garden. Tommy paid off the taxi and accompanied Tuppence to the front door bell. As she was about to ring it, he rested her hand. What are you going to say? What am I going to say? Why, I shall say, oh dear, I don't know. It's very awkward. I thought as much, said Tommy with satisfaction. How like a woman. No foresight. Now, just stand aside and see how easily the mere male deals with the situation. He pressed the bell. Tuppence withdrew to a suitable spot. A slanting-in-looking servant with an extremely dirty face and a pair of eyes that did not match answered the door. Tommy had produced a notebook and pencil. Good morning, he said briskly and cheerfully. From the Hampstead Borough Council, the new voting register. Mrs. Edgar Keith lives here, does she not? Yes, said the servant. Christian name? Asked Tommy, his pencil poised. Mrs. Eleanor Jane. Eleanor spelt Tommy. Any sons or daughters over 21? Nah. Thank you. Tommy closed the notebook with a brisk snap. Good morning. The servant volunteered. her first remark. "I thought perhaps that you'd come about the gas," she observed critically, and shut the door. Tommy rejoined his accomplice. "You see, Tuppence," he observed, "child's play to the masculine mind. I don't mind admitting that for once you've scored handsomely. I should never have thought of that. Good wheeze, wasn't it? And we can repeat it ad lib." Lunchtime found the young couple attacking a steak and chips in an obscure hostelry with avidity. They had collected a Gladys Mary and a Marjorie, being baffled by one change of address, and had been forced to listen to a long lecture on universal suffrage from a vivacious American lady whose Christian name had proved to be Sadie. "Ah," said Tommy, imbibing a long draught of beer. "I feel better. Where's the next drawer?" The notebook lay on the table between them. Tuppence picked it up. "And Mrs. Vandermeyer," she read, "20 South Audley Mansions. Miss Wheeler, 43 Clappington Road, Battersea. Oh, she's a lady's maid, as far as I can remember, so probably won't be there. And anyway, she's not likely. Then the Mayfair lady is clearly indicated as the first port of call. Tommy, I'm getting discouraged. Buck up, old bean. We've always knew it was an outside chance, and anyway, we're only starting. If we draw a blank in London, then there's a fine tour of England, Ireland, and Scotland before us." "True," said Tuppence, her flagging spirits reviving. "And all expenses paid. But Tommy, I do like things to happen quickly. So far, adventure has succeeded adventure, but this morning has been dull as dull. You must stifle this longing for vulgar sensation, Tuppence. Remember that if Mr. Brown is all he is reported to be, it's a wonder that he has not now done us to death. That's a good sentence, quite a literary flavour about it. You're really more conceited than I am, with less excuse. Ahem. But it certainly is queer that Mr. Brown has not yet wreaked a vengeance upon us. You see, I can do it too. We pass on our way, unscathed. Perhaps he doesn't think us worth bothering about, suggested the young man simply. Tuppence received the remark with great disfavour. How horrid you are, Tommy, just as though we didn't count. Oh, sorry, Tuppence. What I meant was that we work like moles in the dark and that he has no suspicion of our nefarious schemes. Ha ha. Ha ha, echoed Tuppence approvingly as she rose. South Audley Mansion was an imposing-looking blocks of flats just off Park Lane. Number 20 was on the second floor. Tommy had by this time the glibness born of practice. He rattled off the formula to the elderly woman, looking more like a housekeeper than a servant who opened the door to him. Christian name, Margaret. Tommy spelt it, but the other interrupted him. No G-U-E. Oh, Marguerite. French way, I see. He paused, then plunged boldly. We had her down as Rita Vandermeyer, but I suppose that's incorrect. She's mostly called that, sir, but Marguerite's her name. Thank you, that's all. Good morning. Hardly able to contain his excitement, Tommy hurried down the stairs. Tuppence was waiting at the angle of the turn. You heard? Yes. Oh, Tommy. Tommy squeezed her arm sympathetically. I know, old thing. I feel the same. It's so lovely to think of things and then for them really to happen, cried Tuppence enthusiastically. Her hand was still in Tommy's. They had reached the entrance hall. There were footsteps on the stairs above them and voices. Suddenly, to Tommy's complete surprise, Tuppence dragged him into the little space by the side of the lift, where the shadow was deepest. What the... Hush! 2 men came down the stairs and passed out through the entrance. Tuppence's hand closed tighter on Tommy's arm. Quick, follow them. I daren't. He might recognize me. I don't know who the other man is, but the bigger of the 2 was Whittington. Oh, join me. Do join me for the next episode, the next video of Secret Adversary. Join me to find out what happened next. Join me for the next video of Secret Adversary. I'll see you then. Bye.